Rod Stewart. What if I told you that after decades of fame, fortune, sold-out concerts, and relationships with some of the world's most beautiful women, there was still one person a legendary rock star couldn't forget? Sounds hard to believe, right? This is a man who lived the kind of life most people only dream about. He had hit records, endless attention, and enough romantic adventures to keep gossip magazines busy for years. Yet when he recently reflected on his past, he made a surprisingly emotional confession. Out of all the women who came and went throughout his extraordinary life, there was one relationship that continued to haunt him. And that's what makes this story so fascinating. Because behind the spotlight, behind the fame, and behind the image of a carefree rock icon, there was a man carrying regrets that never completely disappeared. To understand why that confession mattered so much, we need to go back to the very beginning. Long before he became one of the most recognizable voices in music, Rod Stewart was simply a young boy growing up in North London. Born in January 1945, while World War II was still raging across Europe, he entered a world filled with uncertainty. But inside his family home, life felt warm, loving, and surprisingly happy. As the youngest of 5 children, he enjoyed a childhood packed with attention. His parents adored him, his older siblings looked after him, and for many years life felt almost perfect. Looking back, Stewart often described those early years as some of the happiest of his life. Of course, there was one small problem. Being spoiled meant he didn't exactly develop a strong sense of responsibility. Why worry about rules when everyone around you treats you like the favorite? As he grew older, 2 passions completely dominated his world: soccer and music. Soccer came first. He wasn't just another kid kicking a ball around. He was talented, competitive, and incredibly determined. Friends and family genuinely believed he could become a professional player one day. But music was quietly pulling him in another direction. Everything changed when he discovered American rock and roll. The energy, the attitude, the excitement. It felt like a completely different universe. One artist in particular made a huge impact on him. The moment he heard that wild sound and rebellious style, he was hooked. Soon he was spending every spare moment thinking about music. Seeing his growing obsession, his father eventually bought him a guitar. At the time, it seemed like a simple gift. In reality, it would help change the course of his life forever. As his teenage years arrived, Stewart found himself standing between 2 very different dreams. Would he become a soccer player? Or would he chase music? At just 15 years old, he made a decision that shocked many people around him. He left school. To some, it looked reckless. To others, it looked foolish. But Stewart never felt comfortable in the classroom. Academic life simply wasn't for him. He struggled with structure, clashed with teachers, and often found himself in trouble. By the time he walked away, he had no qualifications, no guaranteed future, and no backup plan. All he had was hope. His first goal was professional soccer. He earned a trial with a football club and believed this could be the opportunity that changed everything. Instead, it ended in disappointment. After the tryout, nobody called. Nobody followed up. Nobody offered him a contract. Just like that, his dream collapsed. For many young people, that kind of rejection would have been devastating. Surprisingly, Stewart didn't stay down for long. Part of him was disappointed. But another part was already looking toward music. After all, the life of a musician sounded a lot more exciting. No strict training schedules. No coaches. No pressure to live like an athlete. It sounded like freedom. There was only one problem. Dreams don't pay bills. To help support himself, he took whatever work he could find. He delivered newspapers. He worked in printing. He trained for various trades. He even spent time working around cemeteries and funeral homes. Not exactly the glamorous future he imagined. Yet no matter how ordinary those jobs were, one thing never changed. He refused to give up on music. Every spare moment was dedicated to singing, practicing, performing, and searching for opportunities. Then came one of the most painful moments of his young career. An audition. This was supposed to be his big break. The chance to impress an influential producer and finally move forward. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. According to the story, the producer was so unimpressed by Stewart's singing that he dramatically demanded the performance stop. Imagine being a teenager. Imagine finally getting your chance. And imagine being rejected in front of everyone. Most people would have walked away. Stewart didn't. The humiliation hurt, but it also fueled him. He became determined to prove everyone wrong. What happened next is something many successful people understand very well. Failure became motivation. Every rejection made him work harder. Every setback pushed him forward. Instead of quitting, he immersed himself deeper into London's growing music scene. He performed wherever he could. He met other musicians. He played for tiny audiences. Sometimes he barely earned enough money to survive. But little by little, doors started opening. A harmonica became one of his secret weapons. What began as a casual skill eventually helped him join bands and meet influential people within the industry. Then, fate stepped in. One random encounter led to an invitation. That invitation led to a band. That band led to bigger performances. Suddenly, the impossible no longer seemed impossible. For the first time, Stewart could actually see a future in music. He worked relentlessly. One group became another. Small venues became larger stages. Unknown performances became professional opportunities. And before long, he found himself sharing spaces with some of the biggest names in rock music. Standing backstage, watching famous performers command massive crowds, he had a realization. He no longer wanted to simply be a singer. He wanted to be a star. A real star. The kind of performer people never forget. Years of hard work followed. There were struggles. There were disappointments. There were moments when success still seemed far away. But eventually, everything changed. The songs started connecting with audiences. The records started selling. The crowds started growing. And suddenly, the young man who once delivered newspapers and worked odd jobs was becoming one of the biggest music stars in the world. Money arrived. Fame arrived. Attention arrived. And with all of that came something else. Relationships. Lots of them. As his celebrity status exploded, his romantic life became almost as famous as his music. Beautiful models. Actresses. High-profile romances. Heartbreak. Marriage. Divorce. Second chances. His personal life became a constant source of headlines. To outsiders, it looked glamorous. But beneath the surface, things were often far more complicated. Because while Stewart appeared to have everything, some relationships left deeper emotional scars than people realized. And among all those romances, one stood above the rest. One woman continued to occupy a special place in his memory. Years later, after decades of success, he would openly admit that losing her was one of the greatest regrets of his life. The question is, how do you move on from a love that never completely leaves you? Maybe you don't. Maybe success can't replace certain people. Maybe fame can't erase certain memories. And maybe some relationships remain part of you forever. If you've ever looked back and wondered, what if, then you already understand exactly why this story resonates with so many people. Because no matter who we are, no matter how successful we become, some chapters of our lives never truly close. And sometimes the people we lose become the ones we remember the most. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts below. What's the biggest lesson you've learned about love, regret, and second chances? Let us know in the comments.